Good morning, students. So, we were discussing the Mughal Empire, the fourth chapter of history. In this chapter, till now, we have discussed about who were the Mughals, Mughal military campaign, as well as we have discussed about Mughal traditions of succession, Mughal relations with other rulers, Mansabdars and Jagirdars, Zabd and Zamindars, Akbarnama and Ainai Akbari, as well as a closer look to Akbar's policies. Then we have seen that Jahangir, the Akbar's son, described his father's policy of Sulhi-Kul in the following words that are given in this box. That is also we have discussed. And now we are going to understand the Mughal Empire in the 17th century and after. So, in this point, we are going to understand that what happened to the Mughal Empire in the 17th century and after that, that we are going to understand in this point. So, let's begin. So, the Mughal Empire in the 17th century and after. The administrative and military efficiency of the Mughal Empire led to great economic and commercial prosperity. International travelers described it as the fabled land of wealth. But these same visitors were also appalled at the state of poverty that existed side by side with the greatest opulence. The inequalities were glaring. Documents from the 12th year of Shah Jahan's reign inform us that the highest ranking Mansabdars were only 445 in number out of a total of 8,000. This small number of a mere 5.6% of the total number of Mansabdars received 61.5% of the total estimated revenue of the empire as salaries for themselves and their troopers. So here it is explained that how the Mughal Empire was prosperous, as well as at the another side the poverty also existed in the Mughal Empire, that is explained in this paragraph. So it is the administration and the military potentials or efficiency of the Mughal Empire that has led to the great economic as well as commercial achievement in the Mughal Empire. International travelers, those who have came from outside to India, they have described about the Mughal Empire. How they have described, they these visitors also appelled this visitors uh, explained that how the land of the Indian subcontinent was the land of fabled and land of wealth, but as well as they have explained that the poverty also existed side by side in the country. Uh, the inequalities were also glaring. How it is explained with the help of the Mansabdar's data or the Mansabdar's information. That time there were almost more than 8,000 Mansabdars were there, out of which only 445 number of Mansabdars were receiving 61.5% of the revenue in the form of salary, and the rest large amount of the Mansabdars were receiving only 5.6% of the revenue in the form of salary. So this huge difference or huge inequalities also took place at the time of Shah Jahan's reign, and the rich Mansabdars were receiving 61.5% of the total estimated revenue, as well as their troopers also. The Mughal emperors and their Mansabdars spent a great deal of their income on salaries and goods. This expenditure benefits the artisans and peasantry who supplied them with goods and produce, but scale of revenue collection left very little for investment in the hands of the primary producers. The peasant and the artisans, the poorest amongst the, lived from hand to mouth, and they could hardly consider investing in additional resources, tools, and supplies to increase productivity. The wealthier peasantry and artisanal groups, the merchants and bankers, profited in this economic world. So, the Mughal emperors and their Mansabdar spent a great deal of their income on salaries and goods. So, here it is explained that Mughal as well as their Mansabdar spent lot of money um, on their deals, as they were receiving the huge amount of salaries as well as goods. This expenditure or this spent of the money benefited which kind of people? The artisans, the peasantry, those who supplied goods as well as different kind of producers to the Mansabdars as well as Mughals. But the scale of revenue collection left very little for investment in the hands of primary producers. uh, Here the example or the meaning of this is what, that the primary producers means who, the peasants, the artisans, they were the very um they were the primary producers, we can say, and these primary producers were receiving very less collection of the uh, revenue or the scale, very little scale of the revenue. Peasants and artisans, those were the primary producers, were receiving. The poorest amongst them lived from hand to mouth, and they could hardly consider investing in additional resources. So, among all these, those who were very poor, they could only earn that was enough, that was also not enough for their hunger, we can say. And therefore, here it is said that the poorest among them lived from hand to mouth, and they could hardly consider investing in additional resources, tools, and supplies to increase productivity. Means they were not able to get much as they could add tools, supplies to increase productivity in their farms or in their production. The wealthier peasantry and artisanal groups, the merchants and bankers, profited in this economic world. So, most of the wealthier peasantry, those who were already having the large amount of money, this kind of peasantries, artisanal groups, were earning huge amount of money. The merchants and bankers profited so much in this economic world. So, the enormous wealth and resources commanded by the Mughal elite made them an extremely powerful groups of people in the late 17th century. As the authority of the Mughal emperor slowly declined, his servants emerged as powerful centers of power in the regions. They constituted new dynasties and held command of provinces like Hyderabad and Awadh. Although they continued to recognize the Mughal emperor in Delhi as their master by the 18th century, the provinces of the empire had consolidated their independent political identities. We will read more about them in chapter number 10. So, the enormous wealth, huge amount of wealth and resources that was commanded by the Mughal elite. A Mughal elite means who? The Mughal and their other officials like Mansabdars and all that. So, these all the resources commanded by the Mughal elite made them, and this enormous wealth made them an extremely powerful groups of people in the 17th century. So all the Mughal elites become so powerful in the 17th century. As the authority of the Mughal emperor slowly declined, his servants emerged as powerful center of the power in the region. So as in the 17th century, Mughal empire or the Mughal emperors slowly declining their authority, At the same time, their servants started to become powerful, or the powerful center of the power in the region. They constituted new dynasties and held command of provinces like Hyderabad, Awadh. So these people, those who were the servants of the Mughal Empire, they constituted their own new dynasties and held command over huge provinces like Hyderabad and Awadh. So Hyderabad and Awadh became new provinces in which new dynasties have started to rule over there. We can say who were these dynasties. These dynasties were basically the servants of the Mughal earlier, but now in the 17th century these servants started to become powerful. Although they continued to recognize the Mughal emperor in Delhi as their master. By the 18th century, the provinces of the empire had consolidated their independent political identities. So here it is said that although they continued to recognize the Mughal emperor in Delhi as their master. So even as they started to gain the power and all that, even then they were considering the Mughal emperor who was sitting in the Delhi as their master. So by the 18th century, the provinces of the empire had consolidated. Means all the provinces of the empire consolidated means made together. What is the meaning of consolidated? Making together or getting together. So all the provinces in the 18th century got together or got consolidated and their independent political identities. And about all these Mughal new provinces, and then they which were we can say consolidated in the Mughal Empire. About these all we will read in the chapter number 10 of this book. So here the chapter is over. In the next period we will see the another chapter, and the question and answers I'm going to give you in this period only. Thank you very much.